like a explosive hit, and it's crazy because those like 6 and 7 pounders you think would just like pull the rod out of your hand, but it's like I think it's such a small bait that they just kind of suck it in as it's falling in, and you barely feel that fish. So it's just like a small tick, just slowly, just kind of, you don't even have to set the hook, just keep reeling, slow, steady retrieve. The hook set themselves, and it's a pretty cool technique. So try it next time you're out. And it's when you want to fish it, it's like when the conditions are real calm, dead slick, clear water. Like this is definitely not like, you don't want to throw this. If you live on like the Red River, do not even buy one of these. I mean, you're not going to catch a fish. I mean, so hopefully somebody proves me wrong, but the best time I've had is when it's cold, clear water, high sun, no wind, just completely like when you can't buy a bite on anything else, this is something you want to throw, you know. I actually fished with a guy, and I told him I wouldn't tell the story, but I actually fished with a pro. I used to be a co-angler on the FLW Tour, and I fished with a pro, and we were on Lake Lanier for the Forrest Wood Cup championship, and he was catching one after another, and I was just like, hey, what's that guy? I've never seen that bait before. And this was like 2 years ago, I guess, we're at the Forrest Wood Cup in Lanier, 2 or 3 years ago, and 3 years ago, so 3 cups ago, and I was like, man, he's just wearing them out. I'm drop shotting back there and throwing like fish head spins like everybody says to catch them on Lanier, and I was like, I asked him, I said, what's that bait up there? And he's from another country, and he said, oh, you don't need to know about that bait. You don't need to know about that bait. And I was like, oh, okay, well, now I really want to know about this bait, you know? And so, yeah, at the end of the day, he ended up kind of telling me what it was, and, you know, I started about 3 years ago, I started messing around with them and really started to figure out this technique. And if anybody knows me, I live in Gunnersville, and, like, we fish, you know, braided line, big rattle traps, you know, big swim baits. And for me, one of the toughest things is finesse fishing. It's hard for me to slow down. It's hard for me to throw a shaky head. But this, I mean, I'm still learning this, but I think it's going to be one of those techniques that you're going to see, like somebody's going to win a big tournament on this real soon. And I actually took a couple guys out yesterday hospitality fishing out here, and we caught a few fish on it. So again, you want to use light line, like I said, 6 to 8 pound test line. I use a braid backing, just to save you some money. You put braid on the back, and you can just put whatever size leader you want. You can switch from a 6 to 8 to 10 pound leader. So I'll throw braid backing with a fluorocarbon 6 pound leader. This particular is Seaguar and VizX. So the times a year when you want to throw it too is like when they're suspended. Like it's not like a bait you want to fish like a worm on the bottom. Like a worm, you let it go to the bottom and you lift it up and let it fall back to the bottom, kind of drag it a little bit. This is like, if you can imagine a fish, like certain times of year when they're in neutral feeding mode, they'll be suspended in the water. They're not active. They're not on the bottom looking, you know, searching for food. They're not on top busting, you know, shad. They're just sitting there. And this is the type of bait you want to just swim past them. Just swim past where they're grouped up. You know, they'll school up, suspend in the summer and the winter months. And that's probably the 2 best months that this bait really shines, is when they're grouped up, they're suspended, and you can't get them to bite anything else. This is one of those things. You know, if anybody's ever swam a grub down in Beaver Lake or something like that, it's very similar, but this has a lot more realistic profile than a little grub swimming through those fish. So again, that's the basics of spy baiting. I know it's something new. It's something that's just coming over from Japan, and check it out. Other than that, a little bit of background about myself. I'm originally from Canada. I moved down to Gunnersville. Used to be an electrical engineer. Couldn't take the cubicle anymore. Quit my job. Became a professional fisherman. Started fishing as a co-angler on the FLW Tour. I get a lot of questions about how to get started as a professional, and I started off as a co-angler. I figured the best way to learn anything is to learn from other people. You know, I was always, you know, in school, like, you know, I'd read my textbooks, and I learned some, but unless the teacher actually taught it to you, I'd learn 10 times more. So that was my philosophy. I decided to get in the back of the boat in the FLW Tour and learn from guys like, you know, Brent Ayler and David Dudley, Jason Christie, Randall Tharp, you know, guys like that. So that's how I kind of got my start, and then I moved up to the front of the boat. I won 3 as a co-angler, and I moved up to the front of the boat and decided to fish professionally. And then last year was my rookie year, and I actually won an event on Lake Chickamauga in Tennessee, and I was actually throwing a drop shot and an Alabama rig. So if you probably know me, I was probably the guy responsible for getting an Alabama rig banned, because I came with this Alabama rig and it had like 15 or 18 baits on it, and so they thought it was an unfair advantage, I guess. So other than that's my story. This is spy baiting. If you guys have any questions at all, I'm sure somebody's got a question. It's actually a spin bait 80. It's made by a company called Duo Realis, It's a Japanese company. You can get them at like Tackle Warehouse or any like the online retailers and stuff like that. But it's a Spin Bait 80 is the name. Oh, slower. Spin Bait 80. Yeah, it's like spinner bait, but like just spin bait. 80, and 80 is the size of the bait. It's just 80 millimeters long. So. They're not selling them here. No, they don't. It's one of those ones. Mostly online is where you're going to find them, like Tackle Warehouse and stuff, like Bass Tackle Depot and stuff like that. So, you got a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say I enjoyed the thing they did on the internet show.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah. So I was also the I guess you call it the star of Circuit Breaker. Last year was my first year as a rookie, and what they did, they had a camera crew follow me around all year long and document. My first season. So it was kind of cool because the first event I ever fished was on Lake Okeechobee as a professional, and the first cast I ever made, I caught a 7-pounder, and it's all documented on YouTube. So it was a pretty cool deal. So if you go on YouTube and you search FLW Outdoors Circuit Breaker, there's like 6 or 7 episodes I guess there's 7 episodes from last year that they just follow me from Okeechobee to Smith Lakes, and you see the ups and downs because as a rookie you're still learning a little bit. So my first year I knew Okeechobee real well, did real well, had a top 10, and then went to Smith Lake and it was just like a bomb of epic proportions. Barely caught any fish. And
Did you have to repair the guy's yard?
that wasn't me. No, that was Chad Grigsby. Yeah, yeah. I think they did though. I think they fixed it. Yeah.
I had a question about what do you feel? A lot of the spinning reels coming like 2000 series, 3000 series. What's a good for just all around bass fishing?
Like a 2,000 to 2,500. Yeah, I like this right here. I think this is a 2,000 right here, and I just like it because it can hold more line. And if you fish a spinning reel, if you put too much line on it, it'll over twist, and you'll get that. I'm sure you've seen where it spins out and it just twists and makes a big knot or bird's nest. So the bigger the spool, the less that's going to happen. So, but also the bigger the spool, the bigger the reel, the heavier it's going to be. So it's going to give you a little more fatigue and get you a little more tired holding it. So. I am, yeah. I'm sponsored by Duckett Fishing, so I'll use all Duckett rods, and they have micro guides on all their rods. And the graphite actually doesn't weigh a whole lot. It's most of your rod, most of the weight from your rod, like what's going to make you tired is coming from those guides. It doesn't seem like they're very heavy, but you put on a lot of guides up at the front there, heavier, bigger guides, and that'll wear you out just moving that rod all day long. We fish 14, 15 hours a day in practice. So after a while you get a little bit tired.
Yeah, I see a little bit of the, fly fishing.
Yeah.
Kind of applies to fly fishing, a $9 rod.
Yeah. The only problem with the micro guides is I don't like when it's really cold and your line starts freezing up. It'll actually, like, the micro guides will freeze, like the water will freeze inside the micro guides because they're so small. That's the only disadvantage I ever see to those. So yeah, I've had that, but yeah, exactly. But for us, if it's 32 degrees out, we got to go fishing still. But a lot of people can just stay at home and watch football or something. So, any more questions? I didn't. I made the cup last year. Actually, I was since I won that last event last year, I made the cup, and this year I missed it. So yeah, no, I did. I fished. I went out there fishing, but I didn't qualify this year for the Forrest Wood Cup. What's that? Oh, it's brutal. Yeah, I don't know if you guys know who Cody Meyer is, but Cody Meyer had like the second best season in FLW history, and he has the most 5-fish limits ever weighed in FLW consecutive. And he went out there yesterday, fished for 10 hours, and never hooked a keeper. Didn't lose one. Never saw a keeper. Never had a bite. 10 hours. One of the best fishermen in the world. Never had a bite. So it's tough out there. I mean, it's brutal out there right now. I mean, if you're at the right spot at the right time in the morning, you can get a few. But once that sun comes up here, it's hot and that clear water, and they just go roaming around out deep. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
I got a multi-question.
All right.
When you're fishing Murray, Hartsville, any lake in the south, what do you start with in the spring and what do you go to as far as in the summertime?
Yeah, like a lot of the lakes around here, they're based their basic forage is blueback herring. So the bluebacks move around a lot. Like they swim. Like you might find them on one long sloping point one day, and like, you catch fish because they're there because the herring are there. But once the herring move, those fish just follow them. So one thing I would do, like in the spring, like when it's cold in the winter, like a good bait is like a jerk bait, like a suspending jerk bait. That's a good bait where you can it mimics a herring, or a swim bait also mimics a herring. And then as the water warms up after they spawn and stuff, I would go to a top water. Those fish on these lakes, they love a top water. A lot of times you'll just see fish come up busting on top, So like end of April, I'd probably fish top water, 80 to 90% of the time. And then in the fall, they start moving back shallow again, spinner baits and, crankbaits and stuff like that. And this guy too in the summer. You got a question? I just hooked myself. Oh, sorry, I thought you had your hand up. Oh, go ahead.
Quick question. I
Yep.
asked this earlier in another seminar, and I don't think quite got covered. If you're unfamiliar with body of water fishing,
Yep.
and you hear a lot of guys say that it's a hair in the body, or
Yeah.
or it's this, or crawdad, or whatever, or a brim, how does one come to determine what that is? Outside of noise.
Yeah, just basic research on the lakes. There's been, bass fishing's been around since the 70s, so at least, quite a bit since the 70s. So a lot of these lakes, people like, Larry Nixon has been fishing for 30 years. So, there's articles on, Lake Hartwell on the internet. There's old Bassmaster magazines. There's all kinds of different ways to find out, But that's usually the way I approach it. I'll look like here, we came to Hartwell in 2008. I didn't fish it, but what I did, if I was fishing it, I would go back to the 2008 results on FLWOutdoors.com, and I would see how those guys caught them. And I would kind of take that as a starting point, and then also take all the previous knowledge that you have, well, that kind of looks like, a cove I fished back home. They eat a jerkbait real good on that type of stuff. I will try that, and it's just a process of elimination after a while, Any more questions? No Alabama rig questions, huh? That's funny because normally when I do a seminar, everybody asks me about the Alabama rig, but so, yeah, go ahead.
Alabama rig, how do you keep the line tied around that center piece that you tie to constantly? Wrap it all around it?
Yeah, the one I used, and I guess do you throw it on braided line?
Usually.
Yeah, see that's the problem. Yeah, I throw it on fluorocarbon, which it's a little bit stiffer line, so when you're casting it, it doesn't kind of move in the wind. Like that braid will move a lot in the wind and get caught up. But one of the rigs I use is made by Picasso too. It's the Bait Ball Extreme and then the Schoolie rig, and they have an actual swivel in theirs, so it actually spins. Where the one you're probably using is probably fixed into the head, right? Yeah, so when it's fixed into the head, if that bait ball or Alabama rig rotates, it'll actually spin around your line. With this, now the swivel will just spin, and it'll keep your line from twisting around the whole thing. Because that's one of the problems we had when we were designing that first Alabama rig for Picasso. Do I ever use swivels? I try not to. Like, you mean like a snap swivel, like to change? The only time I do is on like maybe a crankbait or a jerkbait when it's moving. You know what I mean? If you're moving something fast, it's not that big of a deal. But when you're fishing something slow like a worm and that, and like they're coming down, they're looking at it and trying to decide whether it's real or not, and that's just something that might tip them off to think it's not a real worm or something real. So, but yeah, like a jerkbait, if you're moving a jerkbait real fast, or if you're fishing a crankbait and you want to be able to switch out lures real quick, yeah, I'll use it sometimes then in practice. But normally during a tournament, I don't throw them a whole lot. I use fluorocarbon. I don't like fishing. I don't know why. I just don't like fishing braid, other than if I'm punching like heavy grass. Other than that, I don't. Some guys like braid, but for me, I think it rips the hooks out of the fish's mouth, and there's no stretch in it, and I like the fluorocarbon for a lot of stuff. Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
What is the soaking advantage? You read about it sinking, and you get a lot of. I've been experimenting. You
Yep.
get a lot of pearl in the line.
Yeah, you do. It's got a little bit more memory than the mono and stuff, but it's invisible underwater, so that's the biggest thing. Like the fish can't see the line. if you got a camera underwater, you can't see the line under the water. It's purely invisible under the water. That's the biggest benefit. But like you said, it is expensive. But one of the things I do, and I mean, if you're using a bait caster, right? So you spool the line on, right? And you're only using probably the first 100 feet of it. So when that starts kinking, I'll tie it to a tree, I'll walk it out, and then I'll flip it back over the other side, and I'll take the bottom end, reel it back on. So then you have fresh line that just came from the bottom of your spool, and now it's back on the other side. And they also make like some line conditioners, like I think Kevin Van Dam has like a line and lure conditioner. You spray that on there. I think it's almost like WD-40 or like some silicone-based stuff. And if you don't fish a lot, like if you leave it in storage, it'll get memory on it. But you spray that stuff on it, and it helps with the memory a little bit. Yeah, I think I use Seagar, and I'm not sponsored by Seagar, but they make the Seagar and VizX, and then the Red Label. They're real good. I mean, I think they're real strong, and they're relatively moderately priced in the grand scheme of fluorocarbon. So I think it's really good. It's a little more limp than some of the other ones out there. I use a Palomar 90% of the time. It's just an easy one to tie. It's real fast, real effective, and you just got to make sure you pull the tag in so you don't cinch the main line. If you pull the main line and cinch the main line, it'll actually burn a little bit of the fluorocarbon. So other than the only other time I use another knot is when I'm fishing a topwater. I'll throw like a loop knot, and then if I'm like punching heavy grass down at Okeechobee, I'll tie what's called a snell knot. And it'll actually, when you set the hook on that, it actually pops the hook straight up to be able to get a good hook set in that heavy cover. If I was tournament fishing, if I was just going fishing, I'd probably get some live herring and just troll it, like float it around some points. But but no, if I was tournament fishing, I'd probably be starting off in the morning on those long sloping points, like the long clay points where they get up there and push bait up there in the morning. You catch them on top water, stuff like that, and a swim bait. And then in the afternoon when the sun came up, I would just hit as many docks as possible and just, I mean, they're not getting many bites off docks, but it's really your only shot at catching, being able to catch fish. And you might fish 20 or 30 docks without a bite, but then on the next two, you might catch 2 or 3 off of them. So I would start off top water and then either go to, and then in the summer, you want to start off, when the fish are active, you want to start off with moving baits. But then when the sun gets up, you want to go to the heaviest. You either want to go deep or heavy cover. That's what you want to do when it gets hot. So if the deep bite's not there, I'm probably going to go to docks, which is considered heavy cover, or like lay downs or brush in shallow water, because that provides a little bit of shade for those fish. So. Any other questions? If not, I got to get back to the Keystone Light booth and stop by. We're giving out koozies and autograph cards. And again, thank you. What's it? Take a look at that. That's one on there. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So it's made by a Japanese company.
Yeah.
Expensive?
They're like $10 or $11. Yeah. Yeah. Relatively.
And they slow sink. Yeah.
They follow the bottom and just the props will turn, and then when it stops at the key, it goes like this on the way down, and
so
it backs up. Right. So if a fish is falling, and when you reel it in, you stop it, and then it's their natural reaction to at least get it out of their face.
Which colors do you find are the best? That's a really good one.
Yeah, that's a good one there. That's the blueback color, and then this is white. This is actually a really good color. It doesn't look that great to us, but for whatever reason, the fish love it. Yeah.
You got one treble hook on it?
2. Yeah, there's one on the back and the one in the middle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Small treble hook. You ever
Yeah.
see the outside of them?
I like to go with the biggest hook I can find without changing the action of the bait, So, but yeah, these are real small. Like this one's got hooks on it.
Or you just go up one side?
I try to go up a size that comes in the package. You know what I mean? So, but yeah,
Why is it that you can always hook those in your finger and the fish can spit them out?
that's a good question. I've been thinking about that my whole life.
You ever throw a bigger size?
Yeah, here's a big one here. It's actually a prototype. It's not even available yet. And you can feel how much heavier it is. You can cast that one on a bait caster. Yeah, that's what we came out with. We just came out with that one. So.